Ladies and gentlemen, Henrik Lundqvist is going to the Hall of Fame. We discuss his incredible career, including some of his most notable and impressive performances throughout his Hall of Fame career. Rangers also hire a couple of assistant coaches. We're going to talk about one of them, Dan Muse, on today's episode. All this and much, much more on Locked On New York Rangers.
You're Locked On the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 856 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, yes, Henrik Lundqvist will be inducted into the NHL Hall of Fame. I don't think this is ever really a question of if this would happen. It was more of a question of when it would happen, and it's going to be happening this year. He goes in along with Coach Ken Hitchcock, General Manager Pierre Lacroix, Tom Barrasso, Caroline Ouellette, Pierre Turgeon, and Mike Vernon. So one of three goalies being inducted this season is Henrik Lundqvist. And Lundqvist, it's so hard to know where to start because such an incredible career and just such a good person off the ice. But we can start there, just the personification of class during his entire tenure as a member of the New York Rangers. He wasn't somebody that I ever felt was all that concerned with like image or like branding or, trying to make himself into a star. I mean, he became a star, obviously, but every reason why he became a star and, something of a celebrity and obviously a very notable pro athlete in New York City, it all was a byproduct of what he did on the ice. Henrik Lundqvist was just the man. He was just that good year in and year out, just a model of consistency. We see how tough this league can be on goalies. Somebody can be one of the best goalies in the league for maybe a couple of seasons, and then they tend to fall off pretty sharply. Never really happened with Lundqvist. I mean, obviously, toward the end, he wasn't the same goalie that he was, but, I mean, his prime lasted bare minimum 10 years, where he was that guy, and he was just that good and always one of the absolute best goalies in this league. Of course, he also won a Vezina, where he was named the absolute best goalie in the league. But, to see him going from just a seventh round afterthought, this is one of those things that I don't think gets talked about enough, and I don't think people realize, maybe, I mean, you probably realize it, but you don't really stop to think about it that often. I'm guilty of that as well. But he goes from, seventh round pick, just a complete afterthought, somebody who, most seventh round picks, they become just footnotes in NHL history. That's if they ever even make it to the league, much less put together a Hall of Fame career. But yeah, seventh round, number 205 overall. And to just watch it kind of evolve from like, oh, who's this guy that's going to be on the roster this year? Henrik Lundqvist. Okay, he's going to be the backup to Kevin Weeks. So, okay, cool. I don't really know a lot about him, but we'll see what happens. And then, he gets some game action. It's like, this guy's not really that bad. And then, he should probably be the starting goalie. And then, wow, this guy's really good. And then it's like, who is this guy? Where did he come from? Like how is this seventh round pick that nobody had ever heard of, a guy that, was drafted with little to no hype whatsoever, especially back then, because I don't think the draft got the same amount of coverage back then that it gets today. But, he goes from just, again, complete afterthought to, Vezina winner and just big time playoff performer. And again, just a model of consistency while putting together his Hall of Fame career. And again, just a class act on and off the ice. Just awesome to watch. I tweeted out the other day, just a privilege to watch this man play hockey for as long as we all got to watch him play hockey. Just wonderful stuff. And, speaking of some of the things that he did away from the ice, we touched on that a second ago. Everything with the Henrik Lundqvist Foundation, the Garden of Dreams Foundation. He obviously has been very charitable throughout his career and in his post-playing career as well. So just great stuff. And, the Henrik Lundqvist Foundation, I think at some point, I mean, it'd be amazing to have Henrik Lundqvist himself on this show, but I certainly would like to talk to somebody from the Henrik Lundqvist Foundation, just find out a little bit more about it. Obviously they're very charitable and they've made a positive impact in the lives of many children and many adults, throughout the years since it was established. But yeah, that's definitely a worthy topic for a future episode. I'm definitely looking forward to hopefully making that happen for you guys. But as far as Henrik Lundqvist, again, just one of the most out of nowhere, impossible to predict, legendary careers that we've ever seen. You think about some of the New York sports legends going as far back as you want to go, and I'm sure I use that phrase, and a couple of names probably popped into your head, but this goes back to what I was just talking about how impressive Henrik Lundqvist's career was when you consider that there were zero expectations for him when he was drafted and where he ended up. Because again, you think about some of these other New York sports legends, Derek Jeter, he obviously pops to mind about as fast as anybody. First round pick. Eli Manning, first overall pick in the draft the year that he was taken. Walt Frazier, for you basketball fans, he was the 5th overall pick. Joe Namath, first round pick. Tom Seaver, 10th overall pick. Currently, Aaron Judge, he's doing his thing, and he was a first round pick as well. And I didn't have all these memorized. Obviously I had to look this up, but you're talking about some of the best to ever play sports in New York. And look, being drafted in the first round or first overall or whatever it might be, that alone is not going to carry you to the Hall of Fame. It's not going to carry you to excellence, but obviously, you're being drafted and there are high expectations for these players. And it's not really that much of a shock when they turn out to be great, or in some cases, legendary players in whatever sport that they played while they were in New York. With Henrik Lundqvist, again, it was just impossible to predict. I don't even know that. I'm sure Henrik Lundqvist believed in himself, and he thought he could get there, and he thought he could be, a goalie in this league. But could he have ever imagined that he would play his entire career with the New York Rangers and just put up legendary performances, incredible numbers year after year after year? I'm not even so sure Henrik Lundqvist, who does not strike me as somebody who lacks confidence, could have believed that he would go on to have the career that he ended up having. I guess you'd have to ask the man himself to know for sure. But cannot say enough about just his path, where he started and where he ended up. And something else that, I always go back to, and this is something that never gets talked about, but we actually did an episode about this last offseason or the offseason before that. Hard to remember off the top of my head, but there were 21 goalies taken in front of Henrik Lundqvist the year that he was drafted in 2000. 21 goalies. And of those 21 goalies, only 3 of them ever made an all-star team. They were Rick DiPietro, Ilya Bryzgalov, and Roman Cechmanek. And with DiPietro and Bryzgalov, they both fell apart pretty quickly. DiPietro was, of course, the number 1 pick that year by the Islanders. Roman Cechmanek, he had a solid career, but none of those 3 and none of the other 21 goalies drafted in front of Lundqvist that year could even hold a candle to him. And as I mentioned, maybe I'll try to resurface this episode because I just think it would be fun to, revisit it. But I did in the offseason, either a year or 2 ago, we took a look at that draft class, and I basically just ran through the gauntlet, looked at the 21 goalies that were drafted in front of Henrik Lundqvist, discussed their career and what ultimately happened to them. And again, there's just no comparison between any of those goalies and our guy, Henrik Lundqvist. But I want to keep everything rolling, continue to talk about Henrik Lundqvist in just a second here. I want to just go through some of the stats, the numbers that he put up. Also want to take a look at some of his best performances that he had throughout his career, including some big-time clutch playoff performances. And we're going to do all that good stuff in just a second here. But first, we do have to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Birddogs. Birddogs make you look good. Birddogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit, slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Birddogs shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of a stiff, restricting cotton. Birddogs fixed the issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Birddog uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take off your Birddogs. We promise you that. Once again, go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. All right, we just want to go ahead and thank everybody, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. And for the everydayers, you're definitely going to want to stick around next week. Got a lot of fun things planned. We're going to talk, I think I'm going to talk a little bit about the idea of trading Barclay Goodrow because, there are some rumors right now that the Rangers might be looking to make that happen. And it's not because he's not valuable to the team. He certainly is, but he's the one guy that, you look at that contract, and it might be necessary to move it in order to make some more cap space to do some other things that you want to do this offseason. So we'll track that. Also going to be talking about the draft, free agency in general. A lot of fun and exciting things coming up. It's a fun part of the season. I know we'd rather be watching Ranger hockey, and We would have liked to have seen the Rangers just win a Stanley Cup, about a week ago here, but that didn't happen. And, the NHL calendar is a lot of fun. There's always something to talk about, and we're going to keep everything rolling right along on Locked On New York Rangers. But for today, let's keep the focus for now on Henrik Lundqvist, his resume. 459 wins, that is 6th all-time. 918 save percentage, that's 11th all-time with a minimum of 250 games played. 243 goals against average, 25th all-time. Once again, the minimum of 250 games played. And then he got even better in the playoffs. His save percentage in the playoffs, slightly higher than the regular season, 921. That's 3rd all-time with a minimum of 100 games played. And then also in the playoffs, 230 goals against average. There's 8th all time. Once again, the minimum 100 games and 11 seasons winning 30 games or more, 3rd most all time. 16 wins in elimination games. That is the most all time in the playoffs. 6 Game 7 wins, also the most all time. And an Olympic gold medalist in 2006, Vezina winner in 2012. And honestly, we could go on all day. I mean, there's more stats that I could throw at you guys, but I think that gives you an idea. And obviously, anybody who watched this guy play hockey, the numbers are one thing, but you watch it. You saw it with your own eyes. You know how good he was. You know how important he was to this team. And you saw him routinely be the best player for the New York Rangers while playing such a demanding position in the playoffs. In the regular season, too. I mean, I was going to mention the playoffs, but he was the Rangers' best player for, I would say, bare minimum 10 years. And I'm not even really so sure that can be debated. There was a 10-year window there where he was the Rangers' absolute best player, at least 10 years. And the one knock on Henrik Lundqvist, of course, from the naysayers is that, well, he didn't win a Stanley Cup. And obviously that's true. But did you hear the stats I just read? As amazing as he was in the regular season, he was that much better in the playoffs. He was about as clutch of a goalie, as much of a big game goalie as you could possibly find. And, he brought his game to a whole new level in the playoffs where there are no bad teams. You get some 500-ish teams that sneak into the playoffs, but there aren't any, cellar dweller teams in the playoffs. And obviously the intensity picks up. There's a ton of pressure in the playoffs in general, but certainly on the goalie, whoever that may be. And, you get all these crazy scrums in the goal crease, all these wild scrambles in the goal crease. And the fact that Henrik Lundqvist took what was obviously a Hall of Fame career in the regular season and ratcheted it up that much more in the playoffs and played even better in the playoffs than he did in the regular season. It's amazing. You can't say enough about the job he did in general, but certainly in the playoffs as well. And as far as like Henrik Lundqvist and some of his best games, best saves, best performances, most clutch moments, whatever it might be, it's really hard to narrow it down to just one game or one moment. But I think if I got to pick one, and I tweeted this out the other day, I think I got to go 2014 Game 7, Rangers and Penguins. Rangers were down 3-1 in that series, won Game 5 in Pittsburgh, won Game 6 in New York. Henrik Lundqvist was excellent in both of those games, but he saved his best performance for Game 7, and specifically the 3rd period of Game 7. No amount of defensive meltdowns by the Rangers or Mark Stahl turnovers was going to make a difference. Henrik Lundqvist, I tweeted this out the other day too. That game could have gone 8 periods. He was not going to allow that puck to get by him. Just absolutely stood on his head, made some phenomenal saves, just improvising on a couple of saves, a couple of turnovers by the Rangers that led to some grade A scoring opportunities for the Penguins. Lundqvist wasn't going to allow it to happen. He was getting run in the crease by a couple of players. There was one instance where he dropped his stick and still was able to make the save. And the Penguins are basically trying to push Lundqvist into the net. He wouldn't let it happen. Just crazy stuff. And if you haven't watched the highlights of that game in a while, definitely recommend it. I mean, obviously the Lundqvist stuff is first and foremost, but you know what? Just watch the whole 10-minute highlight package that you can find on YouTube. I think you'll really enjoy it. And yeah, Henrik Lundqvist at the absolute top of his game when it mattered the most in Game 7 on the road there as the Rangers complete their 3-1 comeback against the Penguins. I think of some other moments, though. Obviously the shutout in Game 6 against the Montreal Canadiens in the Eastern Conference Final that sent the Rangers to the Stanley Cup Final. And the one save that stands out in this game, it's hard to even explain. It's one of those things you can watch it multiple times and you're still not even 100% sure what you saw or what you're looking at. Obviously, there's great goalie coaches in the world, Benoit Allaire among them, but sometimes, man, you're a goalie in the NHL, you just have to improvise, and this is kind of what Henrik Lundqvist did here. He made an excellent blocker save, but it went beyond that. Like, he got a piece of it with his blocker, it was still going toward the net, and then he somehow got his arm back and like blockered it away and like just swatted away with his blocker while doing a cartwheel. Again, I can't do it justice by any words that I say here. Just go back and look at it. If you just type in to YouTube, Henrik Lundqvist, Game 6 Canadians, it'll probably be one of the first couple of things that pops up. So that moment I'll always remember, and the shutout in general to get the Rangers to the final. They won that game 1-0, so they needed the shutout. Not like they cruised to a 5-0 victory in that game, because that wouldn't be the Ranger way. That's just way too easy. But Game 7 overtime win against the Capitals, that was in 2015. That was also the completion of a 3-1 comeback, and Henrik Lundqvist in that game allowed only one goal, gave the Rangers a chance. As far as one of the quirkier moments of Lundqvist's career, I always think back to him squirting Sidney Crosby with the water bottle at the end or near the end of Game 6 in 2014. Obviously, tempers were flaring at that point. There was a lot of nastiness at the end of that game. And Henrik Lundqvist, I think he would do it again for the $5,000 fine that he got for that. So that was pretty funny. Even some of the losses, I felt like in the Stanley Cup final against the Kings, that series ended up being a little bit higher scoring than we thought it was going to be. But Lundqvist is excellent in games 4 and 5, gave them a chance to potentially get back into that series. I think about also the Winter Classic. The Flyers down by a goal. They are awarded a penalty shot due to it's either Girardi or McDonough. One of them covered the puck in the crease, and it resulted in a penalty shot. And this is with like maybe 20 seconds or so to go in the game. The Flyers can choose anybody that's on the ice. They go with Danny Briere, and Lundqvist just stones him and obviously preserve the lead there. There are others. You know what? Leave me your favorite Lundqvist memories, clutch moments, funniest moments, whatever it might be. Leave it in the YouTube comment section. I'm kind of curious to see what you guys come up with. I could go on all day about this, but I do have to eventually start to conclude everything here. I do want to talk about Dan Muse being the new Ranger head coach, but we're not done with Henrik Lundqvist. Obviously, we'll have the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. We had the ceremony where his jersey went into the rafters of Madison Square Garden. That was obviously a lot of fun. I will say it was really unfortunate how his career ended. Of course, no Stanley Cup for Henrik Lundqvist. And, his last game ever, this is pretty crazy to think about. Game 2 of the qualifying round of the 2020 COVID Stanley Cup playoffs. They were playing in the bubble, no fans in attendance, and they lose that game. And then, of course, Lundqvist is bought out of his contract. He had 1 year left on his deal by the Rangers. It's about as anticlimactic of an ending to a career as you could possibly imagine for all the reasons that I just listed. We thought he was going to continue his career with the Caps, signed a 1 year deal with them, ends up having the irregular heartbeat, requires open heart surgery, and obviously never played hockey after that. He got back on the ice and, was doing some light practicing, it seemed. He wasn't like quick to close the door. I think he wanted to weigh his options and just kind of see what the diagnosis was and leave open the possibility, leave that door cracked that he could come back and continue his career for at least another season or maybe even 2. But obviously that never came to fruition. And look, you can't mess around with, again, I'm no doctor, but a regular heartbeat, open heart surgery, yeah, it might be time at that point to hang him up. And it's unfortunate that he didn't get to continue his career when he had the chance to. But you know what? He seems to be doing great in his post-hockey life here. Every time we see him, he's always in good spirits. You would never know from looking at him or listening to him that he had this serious ailment and that he had open heart surgery not all that long ago. As I mentioned, we had the wonderful ceremony where his jersey was risen into the rafters at Madison Square Garden. That was just a great night. I thought it was handled beautifully. Lundqvist was awesome at the ceremony. And he's a complete natural. He's doing some analytical work. He works for MSG. He's also on the national stage with some of the hockey playoff coverage. And I think that he does a fantastic job at that. He picked it up very quickly. And again, just a complete natural. I think he gives great insight. And obviously, I'm a little bit Ranger biased. Henrik Lundqvist, he's our guy. I'm going to probably praise him more often than not. But honestly, he could have played for anybody. I would look at Henrik Lundqvist and what he brings to the table when he's doing his analysis for whether it's MSG and the Rangers or, once again, the national level. He does a fantastic job with that. He's also got the documentary that was recently screened at a couple different locations in New York. It basically looks at Henrik Lundqvist and his attempts to come back to the NHL after requiring open heart surgery. It's called Open Heart. I do hope to be able to watch that at some point. If anyone has seen it, definitely let me know what you thought about it. But to kind of wrap things up here, again, just a privilege to watch this man play hockey. 7th round afterthought to slam dunk, no doubt, Hockey Hall of Famer, somebody that was almost always at his best when all the chips were down, playoffs, overtime playoffs, clutch moments, Game 7 wins, the whole 9 yards. He was about as clutch as it gets. And it does bother me that the Rangers never were able to get him a Stanley Cup, but a remarkable career nevertheless, and somebody that obviously beat the odds, 7th-round draft pick to into the Hall of Fame. Pretty amazing stuff. And I figured to wrap up this portion of today's episode, I'll leave you with a tweet from the man himself. This was sent out by Henrik Lundqvist not too long after the announcement was made that he was going to be going to the Hall of Fame. This is what he had to say. Grateful and extremely honored to be selected to the Hockey Hall of Fame. Thinking of all the great players in the Hockey Hall of Fame that inspired me as a kid, feels amazing to be included in this special group. And yeah, I mean, what else would you expect from Henrik Lundqvist? Just a classy reaction to, again, finding out that he was going into the Hall of Fame. But I want to keep everything rolling here. Switch gears a little bit in just a minute. Going to be talking about Dan Muse. What do we know about him? What kind of experience does he have? And what he might bring to the table now that he is going to be a member of Peter Laviolette's staff with the New York Rangers. And we're going to get to that in just a second. But first, got to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for all the fun that you are about to have. Gametime is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Gametime guarantee means you will always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, we just want to go ahead once again. Thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. And let's go ahead and, as I mentioned, shift gears a little bit to wrap up today's episode. Exciting times with the Rangers putting together what I think is looking like a heck of a coaching staff to back up Peter Laviolette this season. The newest assistant coach. Actually, there were two that were named yesterday, but today we're going to focus in on Dan Muse. We'll save Phil Housley for another day. I didn't want to have to, cram it in at the end of this episode here. As for Dan Muse, 40 years old, he was an assistant coach for Laviolette in Nashville with the Predators. He was actually not there the season that the Predators made it to the Stanley Cup final, but he did join the year after that and was there for what turned out to be the final 3 seasons of Peter Laviolette's coaching tenure with the Nashville Predators. He also coached the United States in the IIHF Under-18 World Championships in Switzerland this past April. They won the gold medal there. This was his 3rd year as a coach with the USNDP. He got his start at Yale University, spent 6 years there as an assistant coach. Yale did win a championship while he was there. He was also the head coach of the USHL's Chicago Steel for 2 years, and the Steel won a championship while Muse was there. So he's done a lot of winning, and obviously there's at least some familiarity with Peter Laviolette. He, joins the staff after having coached with him previously with the Nashville Predators. And as for Phil Housley, yes, he joins the Ranger coaching staff as well. Like I said, we're going to save most of his stuff for a future episode, but he had an amazing playing career, was a defenseman, was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame or the NHL Hall of Fame in 2015, 1,232 points for him as a defenseman. So just a phenomenal player. He's also coached with Laviolette in the past. Was a head coach for the Sabres for 2 seasons in 2017, 2018, and 2018, 2019. They went 58, 84, and 22 in that time. Did not make the playoffs either time, which is probably pretty self-explanatory, but somebody else that seems to be highly regarded. And as I mentioned, we'll talk about him, his playing career, his coaching career in a little bit more detail, probably in our next episode. To pretty much wrap up everything for today, though, so I mentioned this. I've been mentioning this on and off, pretty much throughout the offseason here. Derek Stepan stories. I want to hear them. Where you were, who you were with, how you reacted when Derek Stepan scored in Game 7 in overtime against the Washington Capitals back in 2015. We obviously did an episode very similar to this, basically the exact same thing. I asked you guys to send in your Artemi Panarin Game 7 overtime goal stories against the Pittsburgh Penguins, and that was a lot of fun. We got a 2-parter out of it. I realized Stepan was a longer time ago, and maybe everybody doesn't remember exactly every detail, but if you do, I've already heard some really cool stories, and in a future episode during the offseason here, once free agency and the draft calm down a little bit, we're going to do an episode where we basically just share your stories on the podcast here, and just kind of reminisce about Derek Stepan scoring that goal. And of course, I'll share my story as well. Something else, a couple of odds and ends before we call it here. Per Larry Brooks, there is a Board of Governors meeting scheduled for today, and he has been told there is no reason to expect that the cap will increase by more than $1 million. And that's been the rumor for a while. But, the NHL, I think it's time to kind of figure this out here because we've got free agency approaching. We've got teams that might feel like they have to make trades right now. And it'd be nice to know what the salary cap is so you can plan accordingly. So I do think it's time for the NHL to announce this, make it official, and let everybody know where everything stands there. We also, this is exciting to me, we have the New York Rangers preseason schedule for this upcoming season. There are 6 games, just like there were last year, and they're going to play the Bruins twice, the Islanders twice, and the Devils twice. And if I'm not mistaken, that's exactly what the Rangers did last season as well. But to run through the schedule here, here's the big one. The first real New York Ranger hockey game, albeit a preseason game, it will occur on Sunday, September 24th at Boston at 5 p.m. And then to run through the rest of the schedule real quick here, all the rest of the games will begin at 7 p.m. You've got September 26th against the Islanders at 7, September 28th against the Devils at 7, September 29th at the Islanders at 7, October 4th at the Devils at 7, and October 5th home against the Bruins at 7. So definitely looking forward to that. I always call it, it's the appetizer before the main course, and obviously it'll be great to have any form of Ranger hockey. We've got the rookie training camp, or the 2 games that they're going to play, Ranger rookies against Flyer rookies. Those will be happening before then. But yeah, it's not as far away as you think. I mean, we're getting toward the end of June here, June 22nd. And what did I just say? So the first preseason game will be the 24th. I mean, we're only 3 months away from a Ranger hockey game. That's pretty crazy, and a lot of fun stuff that we're going to talk about on, Locked On Rangers going forward here, free agency, the draft, the whole 9 yards. Definitely looking forward to all that. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, at @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's at @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.